Hello and welcome back to another masterclass. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tanya Johnson, registered psychologist, registered play therapist, co-founder of the Institute of Child Psychology. We are thrilled to have Dr. Lexi Kite and Dr. Lindsay Kite back with us again. Welcome, Lindsay and Lexi.
Hi, happy to be with you.
We're just saying that it's been probably about 3 or 4 years. So I was very excited for
Wow.
today. Quick introduction. Lexi and Lindsay are identical twins, co-directors of Beauty Redefined, and co-authors of this fabulous book, More Than a Body. Your body is an instrument, not an ornament. Such important work. Like I feel like the further we get into 2025, 2026, 2027, this book just becomes more and more and more relevant.
Oh, thank you. We agree. It's been, what, 4 years since we wrote it, but oh man, more relevant than ever.
Yeah. And, it's funny because often with parenting books, I feel like, and I've written a parenting book, and I would like to think that it gets more relevant, but I think that the reality is that many parenting books become quickly outdated, whereas this one isn't. I think that what our teens, what our children, as they get phones younger and younger, are facing
Mhm.
is that parents need this information more than ever now.
Well, that
Oh,
means a
thank you.
lot. I think that actually speaks to kind of the nature of our work too, that when you talk about body image, sometimes it's so time bound. It's so based on whatever's trending and what people are talking about and what feels right and progressive right now. But I think our work is really deeply rooted in research and in ideas that are timeless and that don't waver depending on which body types are in style or what parenting methods are in vogue right now. So that
Mhm.
means a lot to hear you say that. Thank you.
Beautiful. And it really comes back to kind of a value set, right? Instilling like, who do we want our girls to be in the world? What can we nurture? And you're right, that doesn't change over time, really. It doesn't matter what's trending on social media or what new video app is out. Those things may shift. But what the message you're trying to give to our girls doesn't actually change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lindsay and Lexi, I'm not sure who wants to go first, but in your book, it's so beautifully explored your own journey on why this book was actually written. And I know that writing a book is a labor of love. So I wonder if we could start there. We have a mom who's sent in a question for us, but I'd love to start with your story first, and then we can go to the mom's question.
I can take it. We have definitely both personal and professional reasoning and motivation behind this work that we've done and the book that we wrote. And I think it really started as kids when we were very hyper aware of our bodies and our appearance. And part of it, I think, is because we're identical twins. So we were constantly being compared and just scanned every time we walked into a room. Who's taller, who's thinner, who has the rounder face, who has the straighter teeth. People would say these things to us all the time. So I think that gave us a really heightened awareness of how we looked and a real self consciousness about our bodies, how they compared to each other, and then just being able to visibly see someone who looks exactly like you from every angle. And that gives you a new opportunity to compare yourself and to critically pick apart what you look like and judge yourself. And that contributed, in addition to the culture we grew up in that was conservative and patriarchal and really valued women for how they looked, and also it was the 90s. It was such a time when thinness was so highly prized. It was really, I think, at its peak in the
Mhm.
late 90s, early 2000s. And that's when we were growing up and growing older in high school and college, just this extreme emphasis on thinness. And we grew up a little thicker. So we were always trying to lose weight from the time we were, I think, about sixth grade is when we really started consciously dieting and, dieting in our household. And that contributed to years of fixation on how we looked and on weight loss and everything else, which then motivated us to dig into this once we got to college and started learning about the reasons we were really feeling this way. That it's not just that we were so abnormally disgusting and embarrassing. Instead, it was because we were brought up in an environment that fixated so heavily on what women looked like. That is what women were valued for. The only women who got attention, positive attention especially, looked one particular way, one really narrow, thin, white, young way. And we compared ourselves to those ideals. And when we started learning about that, we recognized there's a whole field of study around this and that we could help shape for ourselves to learn about why women feel this way. And most importantly, how to help girls and women and really all people to be able to see their way out of this problem and fight back for ourselves.
Lexi, do you want to add anything? I mean, that was so beautifully said. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, even just hearing Lindsay talk about it, I reflect back on what has now been more than 20 years of doing this work. If we start from the time we entered college in 2003 and really had this epiphany sitting in these classrooms learning about media literacy, why media is created and engineered the way it is, how much profit is behind us thinking about ourselves as objects to be fixed, as projects. And we are now, 22 years into this process of helping people understand that women are more than bodies, that very title of our book, that our bodies, if we view them as instrumental instead of ornamental, we can come home to them. We can prioritize how we feel over how we look. And that work is timeless and it is needed for every time in our lives. I am now a mom of three. I just had my third daughter. This work is so relevant to me as a mom and a parent. It's so relevant to Lindsay as an aunt. What we so desperately want people to know is that you cannot fix the outside of your body to heal an internal problem, a shame problem, a body image problem. And we believe we have the tools through body image resilience to help people gain their power back, to see the objectifying world for what it is, that we can't play by these rules, that we can't raise our kids to play by these rules so that they will fit in, so that they will be happy and loved. There is another way, a more loving, human, compassionate way to treat ourselves and to raise our babies and our children to be people that can be at home in their bodies, at one with their bodies, and help heal the world of the very sexualized, objectified way that women and girls are so often treated.
As we both talk, I just think about what a different world it would be for our children if they could just be in their bodies, present in their bodies, using their bodies in all of the amazing ways they can without feeling as if they're always being watched and judged. A different world.
Oh, such a different world. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and before she came along, we had been doing this work for many years, and she kind of became a guinea pig for body image resilience. We'd been talking for so long about how to raise kids in this world to help them be at home in their bodies for as long as possible. And I think about my own baby daughter who is now 9, and she has yet to say a negative thing about her body. She truly has an instrumental view of her body. And I know that at some point that will change. Even with a mom who's a body image expert, I live in a female body and I face objectification every day and I choose how to cope with it. I know that she will face that shame and pain too. But so far, Logan has been able to fight back against the objectification she hears at school from her best friend that says, all I want is to be pretty. Logan comes home and tells me, it hurt my heart so much that my friend said this. And this is what I said to her. She brought her these little stickers we have that say instrument, not ornament, and more than a body. And I just think about the fact that when Lindsay and I were 5, 6, 7, that I was looking down at my thighs in a reading circle in second grade and seeing that my thighs were bigger than all my friends and feeling such immense shame about it. And she has the same thighs and she hasn't gotten there yet. So my whole goal is to help her live as long as possible without picturing herself being looked at and operating according to her own worst fears about how other people might think about her and see her. And that's what we want for all parents. We'll talk about that here today, how to help them live inside their bodies.
Thank you. Lindsay, quick question for you before we jump into our mom's question. Lexi mentioned body image resilience. Can we just quickly chat about the difference between body positivity and body image resilience?
Sure. Yeah. Body positivity has become such a cultural buzzword, I feel like, and really came to the height of its popularity just in the last decade or so. It really wasn't a term before that. And it's a really well-meaning response to the shame that so many girls and women feel. It's this attempt to counteract the really negative messages about women and our bodies in media. And that's coming off of the decade that I mentioned, those 90s, the early 2000s, where there was such a focus on thinness and real sexualization was rampant in media. It still continues to be in many ways. But body positivity is the response, the cultural response to say, girls and women feel bad about their bodies. And so instead, we're going to tell them that they are beautiful just the way they are and that their flaws make them beautiful. And you should love your body because of your flaws. And like I said, it's an attempt. It's not a great fix, but I think it was a band-aid, and it helped people start to think, okay, maybe we need to push back on these negative and unhealthy messages about bodies. But the reason I say it's an attempt is because it has kept the focus still on beauty. It's still putting that emphasis back on feeling beautiful as the key to having a positive mindset about yourself and to having high self-esteem. And we know that it simply is not. There are lots of women who might feel like they look beautiful and sexy one day, but they're still thinking all day long about how they look. And they're evaluating themselves through another person's eyes, how they might be seen. And when your self esteem hinges on whether or not you think you're beautiful, regardless of how you look, then it can also be broken by that too. And everything in our culture is set up to tear women down a notch so that we will then go buy the products and follow the people and, take on the workout routines and the diets or whatever in order to fix that feeling of shame in ourselves. So body image resilience is our answer, and it's a little bit more methodical. Like I said, it's grounded in research on the fact that women do feel negatively about their bodies. We recognize this cycle where women are state of normal, and I'm talking about girls as well. The state of normal, we call it a state of normative discontent, where in our culture, it is perfectly normal and unquestioned just to feel baseline negative about your body, just to feel like, yeah, I'm pretty embarrassing and gross, and that's just the way it is. That's, the nature of being in my body. We don't question that. Unfortunately, a lot of people bond over that. It's an unquestioned state of normal. But in this objectifying environment, which we call the waters of objectification, because it's invisible, we're surrounded by it, we're swimming in it, then we are faced with these, what we call waves of disruption. There's always going to be something in our culture that will knock you down. You might be feeling okay. You're coping all right. Whatever, I don't like my body, but I'm going to survive the day and try to focus on other things. But there will be a wave that knocks you down, and it might be a negative comment from somebody. It might be comparing yourself to your sister-in-law or someone at school or at work who you think looks better than you and is getting more positive attention than you because of their looks. And it could be pregnancy, it could be miscarriage, anything that changes your relationship to your body or how you perceive your own body. We call that a wave of disruption. You have to respond to that. We found that women and girls tend to follow 3 different paths in responding to these waves of disruption. And the first one is to sink deeper into shame. Unfortunately, a lot of people will turn to really harmful negative coping mechanisms just to be able to survive. So a lot of people can relate to this through disordered eating, through abuse of prescription drugs, illegal drugs, alcohol, anything that would numb you in order to not have to feel that shame that you might be experiencing. The more common approach that people take is to simply cling to that comfort zone, to hide and to fix their bodies. So that's where we start turning to the new diet plans, the workout plans, the plans for cosmetic surgery, the makeup, the fashion, all of that kind of stuff tends to keep you in that comfort zone. Fine for the moment. I'm going to fix this through whatever means of control I can find, which is through buying things. It's consumerism, or it's through a new diet plan, whatever that might be. And we also hide. That's when we see girls opt out of PE class, of sports, of dance, of any type of physical activity. They stop raising their hands in class. This is when we are hiding ourselves just to cope with that feeling of shame that comes up through these waves of disruption all the time in our lives in big and small ways. Lexi and I identified this cycle and saw that we needed to find a path out. We could stay in that cycle forever. And unfortunately, body positivity sometimes keeps us in that cycle of putting a Band-Aid on it that says, no, you're beautiful. You're more beautiful than you think. Other people think you're beautiful, I swear. And for a second, we might think, all right, maybe I am prettier than I thought I was. And maybe my reflection is kind of lying to me right now. And we feel okay. But unfortunately, we're still in that comfort zone of self-objectification, feeling shame, and getting knocked over by those waves that will convince us that, no, actually, you're not as beautiful as you think you are. And the method out of this we saw is rising with body image resilience. And that is building up this skill set to be able to respond to those waves every single time and to have the skills to be able to not just cope in the moment, but to build that skill set up and build the muscle so that you can respond and it becomes less detrimental, less jarring every time we are knocked over by one of those waves. It can become second nature to come back home to your body rather than splitting from yourself, watching yourself from the outside like a critical onlooker, like a twin looking at her identical twin thinking how disgusting she looks in those pants. I'm never going to wear those pants. We don't have to think that way. Instead, we can come back home to our bodies through a variety of skills and tools that we would love to talk more about today. But that's body image resilience, being able to come back to yourself instead of coping in all the ways that have harmed us forever.
I love it. And what I love about this approach is it's deep, right? So instead of just kind of like looking at the little surface and going like, you're okay. It's like, no, let's actually look at this and go deeper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Why do you not feel okay? What can we do about that? There's so much more to it.
Okay, so on that note, let's get to this question and then let's dissect a little bit and see what ideas we can come up with. So I'll read it to you. So this came from one of the mamas who listened in and is on one of our social media channels. I came into my 13-year-old's bedroom the other day and she was crying. She was pulling at her stomach and kept saying over and over again that she hated her body. How did this happen to my little girl? She got her first phone last year and I feel like we have kind of lost her these past few months. I try not to talk about my own body stuff in front of her, but I know that she has seen me dieting over the years. I feel awful. Please help.
We can help. We know this pain. I can only imagine how that must feel as moms, as parents, as people who love these kids that understand the pain they're experiencing. That is heart-wrenching. So please know, first of all, we're with you. Oh, my heart goes out to you. Second, it's okay. You are asking the question. You are identifying the pain your daughter is feeling. That is such an amazing first step. Instead of just brushing it off, yeah, we all go through this. I went through this. She'll be fine. You are worried. Let's fix this. So first of all, what we want to do is encourage you to be honest with your daughter and be vulnerable with her. You have to start with your shared pain. And you don't have to tell her everything, but whatever you feel comfortable telling her, tell her about the pain you have felt in your body and when it started. I have a feeling it probably started around the same age as your daughter is now. And that can be really triggering as a mom to see your daughter go through what you went through and you just begin to spiral. What is she going to go through? Media is so much more pervasive now than it was before. I can imagine how painful that must be. Instead, be honest with her about your pain, that she is not alone, that so many girls and women and all people experience pain and shame about how they feel about their bodies. But then we want to dig in. Let's help her figure out, where did these ideas come from? Because you weren't born with them. You didn't always have them. I remember seeing you just 2 weeks ago out there playing in the water or, playing softball with your friends and you weren't worried. So what changed? Let's dig in. Let's ask some questions. Where did you get those ideas? Did it come from your phone? Did it come from what we're viewing? Let's take a look at what's on your For You page. What's coming up? What is your algorithm sending you? Because it knows that you are this age of a girl who is looking at social media. I want you to ask her, how do your friends talk about their bodies? Have you observed anything about me, about your teachers, about how they talk about their bodies that has caused you to think about yourself in the same way? Let's talk about it. Be honest and open and encourage her to be honest and open. The other thing I would encourage you to ask is, what triggered this now? Why right now are you feeling this way? This is a feeling. This is not truth. Whatever you're feeling right now is just a feeling. It is not reality. So help her understand that this isn't actually about her body because she's lived in this body the entire time she's been alive. But what is triggering her? And as you go through these questions and you're open and vulnerable and loving with her, helping her realize that there is nothing actually wrong with her, but that she has learned some information that is designed to harm her and to cause her to picture how she looks instead of living inside her body as her own. As you do that, you can help her to understand that changing her body in some way doesn't actually solve the problem. It doesn't help her. You can have her think about the people she's comparing herself to. What does she want to look like? Who is coming up as the people that she wishes she looked like? And then you can help her realize that even those people don't have all the things she thinks she'll gain by changing her body. Even the most ideally beautiful among us get cheated on, don't have boyfriends or girlfriends or love in their lives. People are mean to them and bully them. All the things that your daughter might think she'll gain by changing her body, she is not in control of. that it doesn't matter if she loses weight or changes her clothes or fixes her acne, that maybe the shame will just move to another part of her body and she'll continue to think about how she looks instead of living in her body. As you ask her these questions, you can help her understand a mantra. The mantra that we live by and that we teach to everyone is, my body is an instrument, not an ornament. Help your young daughter understand that her body is for her use and her experience. It is to live inside of. It is to breathe. It is to play. It is to hug, to talk to people, to connect and interact. Her body is her vehicle. It is her instrument to live and breathe and do and be all the things she can be in a world that really needs her. Her body is not an ornament for everybody else to look at and judge. If she lives that way, she'll never be happy. That's just a start. But we really encourage people to lead with vulnerability and honesty. Let her know that this is a journey they will go on together. And that as you identify the spark of shame as it comes up, and not just swallow it down, not just cope by your daughter making plans to diet, by saying, okay, I'm not going to eat sugar anymore so that I can feel better about myself when school pictures come or when this vacation comes up or whatever the thing might be, instead of coping in the ways that she is going to be so triggered to cope. You are going to help her cope in ways that help heal her by breathing into the moment, by realizing what is actually triggering her, by thinking critically about the fact that even the people who look the way she wants to look don't get the things that she thinks you automatically gain by looking a certain way, by helping her realize that her body is good, that body diversity is good, that her body will continue to change and grow throughout her entire life, day to day of her whole life, just as yours does. And together you can learn that no matter what your body is doing, no matter how anybody else sees your body or how you see your body, it is yours, the only home you will ever have. That when you learn to treat it well and live inside it, instead of floating outside thinking about how you look in that kind of abstract, anxious state, that is where happiness and power and peace lie.
So beautiful, Lindsay. And I feel like we've got it, but is there anything else there?
No, I love that. And I would also just feel really grateful as a mom that your daughter told you that and opened up to you about it. Because a lot of kids will keep that to themselves. That shame is so secretive for a lot of people, especially for young kids. I remember feeling that way as a kid and as a teenager, thinking that I was so uniquely gross and embarrassing that why would I tell anyone else? So to be able to say that out loud to her mom, or even just to be caught by her mom and to be able to have a vulnerable moment and have this opens up a conversation. This is a path forward. And it's really important to be able to do that together and bring that shame to the light of day so that she knows this isn't a uniquely personal problem to her. This is a problem in our whole world. And I've dealt with it and we're going to work on this together.
What I love your advice on starting where we're vulnerable too, because I think for so many parents, it's like, okay, what do I do right now? And how do I fix this? But it's like, oh, no, we have the opening right now to have a very real conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's also helpful to think through what your automatic reaction might be as a mom, because this is where some of the problems come in. So as parents, I think everyone should take, and as an aunt or as a mentor, as anyone, stop and think what your approach might be if you had your young girl say something like this to you. For a lot of people, it might be to say, no, you're not fat. You're skinny. You're perfect. You're beautiful. Really, you shouldn't be worried about this at all because you actually look amazing. They might say, okay, well, no, I understand why you feel this way. And it's really tough. And you have gained weight since puberty. So I'm sure that does cause some embarrassment. And so together as a family, we're going to work on what we eat and we're going to cut out all the sugar we've been eating and all the carbohydrates. And we're going to get back on our routine doing, keto or whatever. And we're going to start this workout routine as a family. We'll all do it together. And all of that sounds good, but it is placing this, it's validating her fears in some ways. It's validating her fears that there is actually something wrong with her body and that she's been bad and that we need to fix this by being good. When you bring in that moralizing of bodies, of weight, of even choices around food and exercise and all of that, then we're actually just piling on that shame and contributing to the unhealthy coping mechanisms, putting more shame on weight. By the way, weight gain, especially for a 13-year-old, especially around puberty, is the most normal thing on earth. we are expected to gain a significant amount of weight at that time. And our weight shifts around our bodies, and hair grows, and acne can come in, and all of these things that push us further and further away from the beauty ideals for some people can be really triggering. And so to even insinuate that there is something wrong, and we're going to work on it, and I'll help you at, by trying to lose weight in whatever ways sounds really good. And it's very cloaked in that wellness language right now. We need to avoid that. You're not going to say anything about how she looks. Of course, tell her, I think you are the most beautiful thing in the world. I see you as, my perfect baby angel, and I always will, because, I have known your little body since you were a baby. It could not be any better. Bring in that parental, that motherly, that nurturing feeling that you have, but it's not because she's not fat. It's not because she's not ugly. It's because she is this little girl that you love with your whole heart and soul because of who she is. And always put the emphasis back on who she is as opposed to what she looks like.
The mom says in there, what happened to my little girl? And I think so many parents can relate. And in your book, you speak beautifully about kind of the little girl who's playing on the beach, and then she enters those waters of self-objectification. And I think so many parents can feel that. It's like you have this kid who's like climbing trees and is just carefree, and then suddenly they become more stilted. They're very aware of how they look, who's looking at them. It's almost as if they're on camera all of the time.
Yes.
And why not introduce that metaphor to a 13-year-old girl who's feeling this way, or even a younger kid who's feeling this way? Why not say, I just read this book about it. You could obviously go through our workbook with your kids. We have this workbook that goes along with More Than a Body that we just published last year, but it breaks these things down into manageable steps. And one of the first steps in it is to think back to when you were a little kid, or when your little kid was a little kid before they started being so self-conscious and seeing themselves through another's eyes. And we use this metaphor of being on the beach, and your whole self, you're embodied, you're comfortable, you're playing in the sand, in your swimsuit, in your little t-shirt, whatever. You're hunched over, you got sand on you, your belly's out, not a care in the world. It's the greatest thing. And so for a mom to say, what happened to my little girl? She's thinking back on that little girl at the beach. And so when this 13-year-old is having such a difficult time, why not say to her, this is a metaphor that might be helpful to think about, that you have dipped your toes or been pushed in or splashed into the waters of objectification. And the social media that's on your phone is contributing to this. And maybe some of the things that I've done and said as a mom have accidentally contributed to this. And other people in your life, talk about those ways that she's been introduced to these very normal waters of objectification and what effect that can have on a person, just to help her be able to visualize that this is a very normal thing. It surrounds us and everyone's in it, but we can find ways to recognize it, to be more conscious of it, and to push back against it.
I love that metaphor. I can see it and feel it perfectly.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, when we were writing the book, that metaphor became like, it kind of felt like revelation. We were trying to help people understand the split that happens to all of us. It is inevitable. Your daughter is experiencing something that is almost just the human condition for women, especially women that grow up in patriarchal, capitalist, and Western societies, or societies where Western media and influence have infiltrated them. It is a universal experience to divide from yourself and split, to not be that whole embodied little kid anymore, but to instead feel self-conscious. And it is not her fault. It is absolutely normal. And being able to not have any sort of blame on how she's feeling, but to let her know that this is normal and it's okay. But there are ways to come back and prioritize how you feel, to fight back against the profit-driven media, including influencers you love, that are asking you to buy, to fix, to change, to monitor yourself. You will never find your happiness there. You just won't. You won't find love there. You won't find more popularity there, at least not for long. Maybe you'll get some validation, but it's fleeting. It can be handed to you, and then it can be taken away from you just as easily. When you find your worth and your value, your love, your friendships in being who you really are, and not a version of yourself that you're trying to curate and cultivate through how you represent yourself online and in real life, that is settling. That is embodying. That helps you realize that you are okay as you are. So that's one way that we can help our girls understand that that splitting that happens, it's normal and it will happen and it will continue to happen. Our body image resilience model is based on the fact that we live in an objectifying world. Nobody's escaping it. That it changes as you age, as advertisers and media makers and beauty products and weight loss products are designed to come up with new flaws for us, to be self-conscious about new parts of our bodies and new things and have new fixes. It is inevitable. And yet we don't have to be just pushed along by those waves in this sea. We can find ways to ride those waves back home to ourselves by prioritizing how we feel in the moment, what our bodies can do in the moment, what is triggering us, what will bring actual joy, what we feel like we're missing, and what we feel like we could gain by changing. And then taking another route to get those things, to have those things that we feel like we could gain. It all sounds very abstract, and we can talk about this in more real strategies. And I think probably starting with social media and how we might use social media is a good way to get there.
Yeah, and we know a lot of the social media angle here. So we know that our kids are getting phones younger and younger. And this mom here says, like, it's been a few months and I feel like I'm losing her. But Lindsay and Lexi, as you're talking about kind of taking back some of that power and going, hold on, I can do something different. I think one of the big things our kids are so flooded with are messages constantly around, again, what you should do, how you should look, what you need to fix. It's all the time. It's like it's in their ear, whispering to them all of the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so social media.
That mom identified it in her question. She immediately drew that connection to the phone that this little girl has had. And we know that. Of course, we know that. We know how social media and how having constant access to that many images and visuals and messages has affected ourselves. Of course, it's affecting the growing brain and self-concept of little kids. And I think it's great that at 13, she hasn't had a phone since she was 9. You know, there are kids who are getting phones younger and younger. And like Lexi said, I think our goal should be to push that access to social media, to phones that are unregulated and connected to the internet as long as humanly possible. You know, in some cases, of course, we want kids to have access to phones just for safety. But there are phones that don't have to have access to the internet and access to social media. Especially, I think, Instagram and TikTok, I think, can be really difficult unless you really, really curate your feed. All social media, we say, can be used for good or evil when it comes to your body image. It can be self-help or self-harm. And girls need to be familiar with self-harm. They probably have classmates if they haven't experienced it themselves. That's one of those ways of coping that people sink deeper into shame through self-harm. The numbing effects, the, feeling pain to be able to feel anything at all is what girls often describe it as. So they know what self-harm is. And when you can put social media and that constant access to other people's thoughts and images in your phone, put it in the same category as self-harm. We use it sometimes as such a way to numb ourselves, a way to distract ourselves, but encourage these kids to stop and think as they're scrolling. How are you feeling right now? Why are you continuing to scroll right now? Why are you reading all of these comments on an influencer's post? Why are you going and looking at this specific person's page every day and seeing how people are talking to them or what kinds of things they're posting? A lot of it is driven by these really negative urges to find out things that might be hurting us, but are giving us dopamine in the moment because we're seeing new images and we're getting new information. Sometimes kids feel like they're learning and these are things that they need to see, when in reality, it's causing them to feel so much more lonely, isolated from other people, depressed. Obviously, negative body image is a huge factor from engaging with social media. And that's something we need to speak very openly about with kids as part of the reason for delaying their access to these things so that they can have some buy-in with it. If this is really like for your own good, it doesn't help to just say this is for your own good. No, you can't do it. Instead, we're going to sit down with them. We're going to actually go through the visuals, pull up your own social media if that is a good tool. If they already have access to one, use that as the tool to go through it. But give them examples to say. Research shows that when kids or grown people are using social media, women and girls in particular feel more isolated and lonely because of it. Women and girls who use social media feel more self-comparison and less unity with other girls and women. We feel competitive. We feel jealous. We feel like we're losing in every bit of competition. We go lower in the hierarchy in our minds every time we are scrolling through social media. So there are these well-documented cons. There are also some pros for using social media for a 13-year-old girl. And you can go through that list of things with her as well. This is a collaboration. This is an active conversation. If we would suggest actually making a list, whether in your phone or on a piece of paper that you hang up and keep together to say, these are the cons. This is from my experience. Now you tell me from your experience, what cons have you seen or heard of from kids using social media? And what are the pros? What do you want? What do you think you'll gain from it? And there is some good connection, some connectivity that can come from engaging in social media, being able to have more communication with friends, with family members, with people you might not have such easy access to face to face. And that can decrease feelings of loneliness and isolation when used properly. There are people who can help you feel better about your body because they are modeling really happy, effective, healthy behaviors, especially physical activity. We know that getting back inside your body, using your body as an instrument instead of an ornament is one of the best ways to feel better about your body. And if you're following female sports teams, female athletes, there are lots of female Olympians that document themselves doing their weightlifting, their shot put, their, soccer skills, basketball, whatever it may be. Those things are well documented to help increase your feelings of self-efficacy, that confidence to feel that you can do the things that you want to do. And having access to that can kind of be a reminder, oh, wait, I should get out there. There are healthy role models to be found on social media too that can be part of the pros list. But this should be an ongoing conversation where you get the buy-in from your kids to say, okay, yeah, I do. I'm adding cons to this list as well as pros. And we're going to negotiate together on how much time I can spend, on who's going to have access, because mom and dad are going to have my password. They're going to have the ability to log on and check whenever they want. And that's part of the deal that we come up with together.
Yes. A few things that I would add to that. We write about this in both More Than a Body and in the workbook for More Than a Body. In the workbook, we go through questions to ask yourself right after you have engaged with social media or watched your favorite TV show. This is stuff you can do with your daughter, with your kids, to figure out, is this sparking my self-objectification? Is this causing me to float outside my body for a minute? Picture how I look instead of living inside my body. We also talk about this pros and cons list. Along with that pros and cons list, helping your kids and yourself to understand the algorithm that your social media platform uses to feed you content is so important. You can train this algorithm. It is designed to be incredibly profit-driven. So the algorithm will send you ideally beautiful images. On TikTok, on Instagram, on any visual social media platform, the algorithm will send you ideally beautiful images first and throughout. And when you are spending more time looking at objectified or sexualized women's bodies, at the faces that are being promoted to you that are always filtered, even if you don't see the little thing that says this beauty filter is being done. Most people are doing they're doing their videos or their photos in excellent lighting, with ring light lighting. Everything is flattened. There's post-production, there's always editing. But knowing that algorithm is feeding you certain content can help you retrain the algorithm to give you what you need. So if you spend time looking at something, the algorithm will give you more of that thing. But if you click mute or unfollow, or I'd want to see less of this, if you report things that are, that you do not want to see, that are harmful in some way, that is a good thing. Whatever you can do to quickly scroll past, to notify the platform that you do not want to see this, is going to help you. And then seek out, literally search, type in the search bar what you want to see. Women athletes. You want to see if there are body positive influencers, if there are activists you want to see, type in body image, type in mindfulness, whatever it is you want to engage with. There are so many people that can offer you insight, advice, community. There is good to be found. With my own algorithm, with my use of TikTok and Instagram, I have purely filled my feed with things that don't cause me to compare myself. I do not follow influencers, that even people I know and love, they are gaining follows, they are gaining money. It is profit driven to be able to sell items, to be able to say, you can buy this, click on my link to get this. I'm not going to follow any of that. And when you can help your kids understand that the algorithm can work for them instead of against them, That is such an important start for you and for them. On top of that, setting a limit for screen time, for not using it when you're feeling especially triggered, when you're feeling especially self-conscious. That's not the right time to be using it. You want to use it for the pros that you've written in your list, for being able to connect with people, to learn, to whatever those pros are that you want to do. That is who you should be following. And you should be keeping it to for young kids to people that you know in real life. They shouldn't be messaging with anybody they don't know. There are so many ways to stay safe on social media, but ideally we push it as long as possible. And when they get there, when they are using social media, we are active participants with them. We are not passive consumers.
I love that. I love that. I love that last one. We're not passive consumers, because that's what we're teaching our kid, is that we actually do have control, because that's things so often feels like, what do I do? And it's like, actually, no, there is actually quite a bit of control that we do have here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So our first one for this mom, there's been lots already, but a big one is social media. So I love that we've covered that. What are some other concrete things that this mama can think about for her kid?
I would concentrate on the physical part of things. So we've talked a lot about how you think about yourself, how you can stop and breathe and take a moment to reflect on what's triggering you and all of those things. I think taking a really active role in using your body as an instrument isn't something we should just talk about. It's something that we should actually build into our lifestyles, because that is one of the most effective ways to build a healthy self-concept, and especially a positive body image for girls and for boys. So really building in time into your life, as opposed to saying, all right, as a family, we're going to be more active so that we don't feel so fat. And so, whatever. Instead, we are going to just be more active to be able to stop thinking about how we look. We are going to use our bodies as instruments, because that's what they were designed to be. And that helps us to feel better about every aspect of our lives. You get those endorphins pumping, your mood increases. You feel better about your body, how you function, all of that. So regardless of your ability level, simply using your body, going on a walk, is a great way to do it. It's super cold right now, so there are things we can do inside that can get us off the couch. All those things that are so isolating, where we're spending time on social media and watching TV and movies and all of that, all of it's fine. Obviously, we want to use moderation, but one of the most effective ways to be able to feel good about yourself and not get stuck in those triggering moments is simply to use your body in whatever way you can. So build that into your lifestyle. Intend to walk a little bit further than you planned to. Plan some time to be able to take a dance class, or if there's some other physical activity. It doesn't even need to be exercise related. It could be art related. It could be music related. Those are ways that we can get out of our own minds back into our bodies, focusing on our physical senses. What can you do? What can you see? What can you feel? Really, how do we experience the world, as opposed to how does the world experience us? And how am I picturing how the world experiences me? That gets you into this flow state. And, in psychology, this flow state is so well documented to being something that improves your life and your skills in every possible way. So a flow state is basically just getting past the point of self-consciousness when you're so focused on whatever task you are engaged in that that's all you're thinking about. And that can be something that is even kind of meditative for people. It can be really healing for people to be able to just do something with their full focus and their full mind without having to be in that state of self-objectification that so many of us are really used to. So I would seriously recommend just finding whatever way you can to engage in enjoyable physical activity, and in activities that do not revolve around taking in images, especially of other people, or hearing anyone in dialogue about how you look or how anyone else looks.
Yeah, I think I hope most people have experienced a flow state at some point. For me, it's swimming. Interesting. I think about the waters of objectification, but it's swimming for me. And you lose that sense of like time and place. You're just there. Yes. But I know for many of us, as we get older, those moments become far and few between. So I think giving this little one at 13, she's not that little, but giving it to her at 13 is so incredibly powerful for her.
Yes, absolutely. Another thing I think has been a powerful piece of, even in our book, Lindsay shares this story that emphasizes this point that we need to prove ourselves wrong. We need to prove our worst fears wrong. And especially for a 13-year-old girl, looking back, we all remember the fear, the anxiety that swirled around in our brains when we were even just like walking into school or in PE or, having to do a class presentation or whatever the thing might be. You imagine an audience around you at all times. That is part of puberty. And then on top of that, the self-objectification that we grow up and grow older, learning to view our bodies as projects, as parts in need of fixing from head to toe, that just exacerbates this idea that there is an audience at all times. And so that audience can feel so scary. You literally picture the worst thing you think somebody could be thinking about you, and then regulate yourself according to that. You act according to those worst fears. So you don't go out and get sweaty during PE. You don't think that you can go to the gym or on that walk because you don't have the right thing to wear. You can't go to that event because your acne is flaring up. A million different reasons that we hold ourselves back. We isolate ourselves because we have been taught this lesson that in order to feel good, you have to look good. That is not true. What is look good? That is such a subjective thing, but we regulate ourselves against it. We control ourselves against these unreal ideals that don't actually exist. Instead, prove yourself wrong. When the fear comes up that I don't want to go to school today, when she's saying she doesn't want to go to school and you really dig in and it's because she doesn't have the right outfit, those pants, that shirt is in the wash and that's what she wanted to wear, or somebody had said something mean about her. Instead, we encourage her to prove herself wrong, to get dressed, do whatever she can to get out the door and do the thing anyway. And you do the thing anyway too. You swim on your family vacation. You swim too. You take the family photos. You don't untag yourself in the photo that you hate that somebody posts online, or you don't freak out about it when you see it. When you go to the doctor and you've gained weight and they say something about it, you don't automatically make a plan to hurt yourself through over-exercise and under-eating that will only hurt your metabolism in the long run, that isn't actually helping you gain health. How can you prove your worst fears wrong? You do that by doing the thing anyway. And no matter what, as you're moving and doing and being, the endorphins enter your body by doing the thing. You find people that you can connect with so you're not isolated at home like so many of us do when we sit out of activities, events, opportunities, because we think, once I lose a little bit of weight or once I fix this thing, then I'm going to feel good. Then I'm going to qualify to be seen. That's not true. That keeps every one of us isolated in our own homes, scrolling on our phones. No, prove yourself wrong. Do the thing anyway. Wear the thing anyway. Say the things anyway. Attend the event. Volunteer for the thing. And in doing that, you become more you. You come back into your body as your own, and you realize that those anxious fears, they don't have to control you.
I would say tell your kids about those moments too, where you have faced your fears and have come out better or have learned a new lesson. And maybe it was difficult. Maybe it wasn't the best thing you've ever done in the greatest day of your life, but still you learned that you could survive it and that actually it was easier to do next time because you tried this time. I would tell the story of me swimming. The day that Lexi's oldest daughter, Logan, starts talking about feeling self-conscious in her body or not wanting to go swimming, I would tell her my story about swimming, about being a swimmer, a competitive swimmer for years growing up, but then getting into high school and just past puberty. I was 15 years old and decided I was too embarrassed. These boys joined my swimming class, my high school PE credit swimming class. And I was so self-conscious of them seeing me in a swimsuit that I literally quit. I quit swimming. I pretended I didn't care about it. And I spent 6, almost 7 years refusing to swim. And it got to the point where I had already graduated from college. It was a beautiful summer day. I had a boyfriend and some nice friends who wanted to go swimming at this reservoir, go cliff jumping. And I wanted to go so bad, but I coped in the same ways I always did, hiding and fixing. I just said, oh, sorry, I'm too busy. I can't go. I'll see you afterward, while I'm mentally making plans to starve myself for weeks until I felt qualified to go next time. And I somehow faced an awakening in that moment when my friends kept pushing against me and saying, no, you're not too busy. You can go. What? It's a Friday night. It's a Saturday. You can do that dumb thing later. And they convinced me enough that I was like, all right, I do want to go. My excuses aren't even holding up for myself. Let me do some real self-reflection and figure out what's going on here. And I recognized that it was all just that fear, just fear and body shame, fear of what they would think of me, fear of my boyfriend not being attracted to me. And I recognized that this was an opportunity to push back and to just simply test it. And I knew that I would survive one way or another. And I went swimming that day for the first time in 6 or 7 years. And it became one of the most like transformative experiences of my entire life, even to this point, just because of what an effect it had on me, that I swam for the first time in years and just felt it's like what you described. It's that not a care in the world, that weightless, that just immersive experience of just being away from everything, in your body, in the water, feeling amazing. And I just felt so capable and strong, and I was still a swimmer. It honestly changed me. I was only 21 years old, but I learned at that moment that I could push back against my worst fears of what people would see when I had a swimsuit on and what they would think of me. And in doing so, I could build this resilience against that same disruption happening next time. And that same disruption did happen to me a million more times, and it continues to happen to me. And yet, because I learned in that moment that I could push back and test it out for myself and still survive, I have continued to choose the exact same choice every single time. And it has gotten easier every single time, to the point where now I don't even question. Someone invited me to go swimming, I'm going to go swimming. I'm going to go on a beach vacation, regardless of who's watching. And I'm going to have an amazing time getting in that water, not just sitting and hiding, in the towel and under the umbrella. I learned that for myself. And I tell that story all the time, and it's in the book and all of that. But I think it just represents one of those moments where you build your body image resilience by simply giving it a shot, pushing back against those fears, and just find out for yourself. I think 9 times out of 10, you're going to find out that not only is it not as bad as you thought, but it was much better, and that you are better for it. We've received countless messages from people, stories they've told of things that they've done despite their self-consciousness, despite not having the right clothes, or they've gained a ton of weight or whatever. And they have an experience that opens up a whole new world of relationships, of friends, of abilities, of skills, of, things that they look forward to continuing to do. And I think it's just so empowering to just be able to try. And for a 13-year-old girl who is riddled with fears about what's going to happen to her if she doesn't align with these ideals, help her find out that she can test it out for herself. And it's scary. It is scary, and validate her all day long, but help her find out that it's not as scary and as detrimental to her as she thinks to not fit those ideals, that she'll be okay.
I think everybody listening in is relating and thinking of a time that they've set out. And I know even for me, all the times I've set out, when I look back now, I go, why did I do that? Who was I even with? Who was I so worried about?
Yes. Why
strangers on the street?
Yeah. Why do I care about strangers?
Some person at the beach, a beach I'm never going to go to again. Yeah.
They don't know your name. They are never going to think about you again. I always think about that. What is your worst fear? Okay, so what if you experience it? You go on that vacation and you hear somebody in the row over from you say something about your body. Okay, what's the worst that can happen? You heard that and you continue living. They have nothing to do with you. You might have somebody you love say something negative about your body. That happens so much, especially for kids, with well-meaning parents or caretakers that say, yeah, you've gained a little bit of weight, or you would look a little bit better if you put on a little makeup, or if you dress this way, why don't you dress in a more flattering way for your shape, or whatever the thing might be. We've all heard these things. They don't help, they hurt. But when your child experiences this, hopefully not from you, but if they can be open with you and be honest about what they're experiencing, what the bully at school said, or the person that was their friend said, or what they saw, whatever the thing might be, when you can help them realize that even their worst fears don't have to break them. How are you going to respond? This is your wave of disruption. What are we going to do now? Are you going to isolate yourself and punish yourself for this thing that is actually a problem with that person? It has nothing to do with you. If they say something about your body, it has everything to do with how they were raised, what they see, how they feel about themselves, how much they hate that part of themselves, that they're trying to exert that control over you. When we can help people realize that we're all more than bodies and that we're all trying to navigate a world that can be so painful, then you help them recognize that the things that might be their worst fears that they might experience based on what somebody else says or thinks about them, it doesn't have to rule them or control them in any way. It can hurt, and you can acknowledge that. We've all experienced those yucky things. We've all heard those things, most often from our own brains. you know? It's not always from other people, but it is often the things we say about ourselves when we see a picture of ourselves or we see a reflection of ourselves. And when we can learn that we are more than a body and everybody else is too, and that navigating a world where you can compassionately understand that you're going to face objectifying things, you will face waves of disruption that knock you over, but you're going to get back up. You're going to get back up. How are you going to do it today? What are you going to do? What's the plan? Instead of those old ways of coping that hurt, oh my gosh, you can help your child and yourself grow in body image resilience so that, like Lindsay said, you're flexing that muscle over time and the responses become easier over time. The rising with resilience becomes instinctual. Instead of sinking into shame by hiding and fixing and hurting ourselves, instead, we recognize that pain and we rise up in the face of it. I'm not going to punish myself. This has nothing to do with me. This is a problem with society, and I'm not going to be part of that. I'm going to rebel against that. How can you treat yourself well? Prioritize you, how you feel, who you are, instead of how everybody else sees you. It is such a happier way of living. And we know that personally. We experience that every day.
I think that's such a beautiful place for us to wrap. I could talk to you for another hour or two. Quick question about Beauty Redefined. Could you just tell everybody about it? So we've spoken a little bit about your book, which is so beautiful, and the workbook that Lindsay showed us. Beauty Redefined. What is it? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, Beauty Redefined is basically our public-facing work that we started during grad school. So we created this visual presentation. It was actually our co-authored master's project where we were trying to take our new approach to body image and take it out to the public. So we started publishing little bits and pieces of that on Beauty Redefined and created a nonprofit out of that. So we continue to do speaking engagements. We have an online course. We've shared that course with lots of different groups for classrooms and kids. We also share our workbook with groups that need it, underprivileged groups, underrepresented groups. And that's how we spread our positive body image and our body image resilience messages. We do that a lot through social media, less so in the last couple of years, for sure. We've taken a giant step back from social media after doing it for, 10 years. Every day. And so it's been a really nice break and we recommend it to other people, but we continue to do everything we can to share these messages through Beauty Redefined and help people to build their body image resilience.
Lindsay, Lexi, thank you. Such incredible work. And I've got 2 little girls myself and I can just relate to everything. And I'm so appreciative of this mom's question too, because my heart is there, and having 2 little girls, I could be there too. So it's so wonderful that she asks the question and that we have your expertise. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us and for the work you do. It's so important.
Thank you.